Today is November the 15th, 2012, and my name is Ron Carrico. I'm with the San Diego Air and Space Museum, and I'm here with Hans Busch, who was a World War II pilot, came to the United States in 1949 or 51?
51.
51, and went to work in San Diego, and I think you were an engineer with Convair, is that not right?
Convair in the last 4 years in Germany for Convair.
Oh, really? So, but during the war, you flew 22 different airplanes in Germany, and finishing finally with the Me-262, which is one of the most fascinating of all the airplanes. So, let me ask you some questions. What year were you born?
1924.
Okay. And so by the time that, when the war started, you were about 16 years old then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did join in 45, and when I turned 17, and on 18th birthday I reported in. They made me a medic. I don't know anything about being a medic, but I ended up being a medic.
Well, so anyway, Mr. Freeman just got, Mr. Wright just got here, so anyway. We're actually recording right now, we just actually started. You missed about 1 minute, so, which I can edit all this
Well,
out.
I found out the hard way that 8th Avenue is divided in half. This is 8, the low numbers, but on the map it was way down at the other end of 8th Street.
Well, anyway, okay, let's
Okay.
continue here. So, you were born in 1924. What town were you born in?
Hamburg.
Hamburg. And your parents, where were they? What did they do? What did your parents do? What was your father's occupation?
My father,
Mm-hmm.
he was a World War I naval officer for the Emperor's Naval and participated in the Battle of Jutland,
Really?
Skagerrak.
So you had did you have a military history in your family before?
Not so much. He of course, World War I came to an end, and his career in the Navy discontinued. So I was only through him with the Navy, and he was devoted to be a naval officer.
So now, when you were involved in the Hitler, it was similar to the Boy Scouts, you said?
Yes.
What was that called?
Hitlerjugend.
Okay, and it was that where you learned how to fly gliders?
Yeah, when I was 14, not each town had glider facilities, but I was living in Travemünde near Lübeck, and there was a facility in the school where kids, 14-year-old, constructed a real flying glider. The SG-38, for example, was one type. And when each one had completed a number of hours working in the shop, then he was entitled to participate in the flight activity on the
Wow.
weekend. And so I had enough working hours that I did my first glider flying when I was about 14.
Was it a two-seater glider? Was
No.
there was a,
Single seat.
well, how did you learn
It
to
was-
fly a single seat?
It was on a hill, not a mountain, but a hill. This slope into the wind and just grass and forest around there. And the flight instructor set up the glider at the top of the hill and told the student to keep with the stick like any other aircraft. The ailerons moving so that the wings stayed level and didn't fall off on either side. And once the student could keep the wings level, then it was time to launch. And he then demanded that the student would not pull back on the stick, but keep it in the neutral position. And then there was a bungee cable, like a big rubber band, that was hooked up to the nose of the aircraft, and there was in V shape, stretched out down the hill, and on each strand there were 4 or 5 boys hanging on to it, and then he would give the command, and 2 guys were sitting at the tail of the aircraft and holding down the tail. Then he would give the command, stretch out seen, and then the boys down the hill started walking down the hill and stretching the rubber band. And then laufen means run. And when he saw it was stretched to the maximum, then he would tell the 2 guys at the tail of the aircraft, let go, loslassen. And then the aircraft had no wheel, but it had a wooden skid that scratched a few feet, and then the aircraft had enough in the wing to get lift so that the aircraft, and the student was instructed to look at a point on the horizon and head for that, and don't deviate to either side, and keep the nose in that one position. And as this was not a high performance glider, it had just enough lift to let the aircraft go down a couple 100 feet. And then it settled down, and then the student tried very hard, if possible, to keep the wing on, to drop off on either side.
Sure.
And then the whole gang of boys came down with a little dolly that had 2 wheels and set the aircraft on it and dragged it back up to the top of the hill. And if you have done this all day, you don't need a lullaby to fall asleep. The camp had usually weekend activity, had tents and straw in the tents, and you hit the sack.
So that would have been 1938
Yeah.
or so. Where was that?
Near Travemünde.
So then, so 1939 or 1940, is that when you started flying for the Luftwaffe?
43.
43, that late? Was it because of your age?
That's usually 18 is the time that you get drafted.
So you were drafted then?
Well, at that time I was living in Güstrow, and I wanted to, when it was time to be drafted, I wanted to join, inspired by glider flying, I wanted to join the Luftwaffe, where before, because of some affiliation with my father's future past, my future thought would be in the Navy. And what I liked best, of course, was the submarine duty. I thought that's ideal because you have a small group. At that time, the crew was probably not more than 20 sailors, and you felt buddies that you can rely on and daring things that a submarine does from the books that I read of World War I submarines.
So, but how did you get in the Luftwaffe then?
So I discontinued my thinking about my Navy duty, and instead I contacted the Luftwaffe for a duty as a pilot.
How long was pilot training? How long did it take to get your
Well,
wings?
The interesting thing was that after I had written to the Luftwaffe, they sent me a notice to show up at Hanover at a testing station. And for 3 days, boys were tested for physical abilities and psychological testing and so forth. So anyway, the 3 days of testing in Hanover resulted in no decision. We were not told you are accepted or rejected. So went home and waited for the order, you are accepted, and to report. However, a notice came from the, what do you call it, the hiring of
Recruiter?
recruiting station. And the notice came to report on such and such a date to be drafted in the heavy field artillery. Shucks, that's not what I had hoped for. And I waited every day for an answer from the Luftwaffe. Am I rejected or am I accepted? So it took a couple of weeks, and finally a letter came from the Luftwaffe, you are accepted. With that letter, I went to the district, recruiting district. Here's my acceptance, so that made the heavy field artillery being rejected. So that meant that I was ordered by the Luftwaffe in March of '43 to the boot camp at the air base of Busch in Saxony. And from there, since it was an acceptance to be a pilot and an officer career, so I went to Auschwitz, and from there I was automatically assigned to Air Academy number 4, Fürstenfeldbruck, near Munich, to there start the training and basic flight training as well.
How long did it take to become ready to go on to one of the, I can't remember what you flew when you finished pilot training. What did you fly?
That's the thing that I think was regrettable. When you think Germany needed pilots, and in 1943 there was a shortage. However, the Air Academy had a course running prior to actual flight course. There was discipline and strictly military, left turn, right turn, whatever. Running, hit the ground, and day after day it was boring, and the only reason why everybody bit on his tongue and kept going as requested, because you didn't want to get washed out and end up in the infantry. And so you went along with it, but no flying yet in the first 4 weeks.
Well, when did you finish your training, though? And you said you started in March of '43, so by the...
Well, then that was boot camp.
Right.
And so in summer of '43, then finally actual flight training started. But that consisted of SG-38, the one that we flew as a kid, boy. We used as a primary trainer, and included then the more advanced glider, Baby, Junior, and Kranich, to fly those gliders to accomplish the international C badge for glider.
I wonder why they wasted time with that. So when was your first powered flight was in
That then
late '43?
started with the Bucher 181 and the Bucher 131 and the Arado 66.
Now I see, looking at a picture here of the Bucher 131, that's a biplane.
Yeah, 131, and then the W-34, W-33 was a Junkers type aircraft.
So then when you finally finished pilot training, you finally ended up flying is it called Caudron? 445, this one here?
Yeah, that's a Coudron.
Caudron, okay. That's actually a French airplane, isn't it?
It's a French aircraft, yeah.
And how long did you fly that?
It was not a certain time that we flew a certain type. It was a mixture. You flew the Arado 44, Bucher 181, W-33, W-34, and until then you had your like the basic license, pilot license.
I read, this is your book here, I'll give it a plug here on the TV screen, and I've read most of it, and frankly, it looked to me like you had a lot of fun.
Oh.
With you had two really good friends. I mean, you and two other fellows were very great friends. Are they still alive?
One died a couple of years ago, and one is still alive.
Is he in the States or in Germany?
He is living in Tutzing on the lake,
Oh, really?
Starnberg, south of Munich. That is, he is living there in the summertime. The wintertime, he is at the Canary Islands.
But reading this, when I was in the service at the same age, 24, 25, it was a lot of fun. I mean, being an Air Force pilot and all the things you get to do. But let's move forward to, what was your first operational combat aircraft?
The first and last one was in 45.
Well, but you flew the Focke-Wulf 190, you flew the
The
Messerschmitt.
190 was only an interim requirement. You think by Hitler's special order, Bomber Wing 51, Edelweiss-Geschwader, was assigned to fly the 262,
Right.
but that's not a bomber type aircraft.
Well, that's what Hitler thought. Right, a lot of people thought that the 262 should be used as a fighter, air-to-air aircraft.
Fighter aircraft. Yeah.
But Hitler decided it should be used as a bomber, correct?
Because he's paranoid about retaliation for bombing German cities, will bomb. But the Junkers 88 or Junkers or Heinkel 111, slow moving twin engine bombers, could no longer operate.
But didn't you not fly the Junkers 88 and the Heinkel? Did you not? You flew them for a while, didn't you?
Again, that was part of the training that we went through at the instruments training. When we were through flying the various types of aircraft and had, so to speak, the pilot license was accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And then where would you want to fly? And we were asked, each one was asked, what type of mission would you like to fly? I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That's where the glory is, of course.
The 109, fly the 109?
109 was, I sat in him in one time, and it's pretty tight.
Pretty tight, yeah.
Focke-Wulf 190 was more roomy, you had time.
So you flew the Junkers and the Heinkel just for instrument proficiency, and then you were selected to go to the 262, but you didn't know what it was, though, right?
Okay, so when I was through first at the academy, flying the various single-engine type aircraft,
What month and year would that be? Oh, wow. Flight logs.
that's my pilot license.
How did you manage to keep that all these years? My heavens. With all the running around you did after the war, how did you manage to hold on to all of this? Oh my God, look at this.
Yeah,
It's falling apart.
yeah.
I mean, frankly, I was
You wanted to,
very interested in all the things you did
no,
when the war was over. I mean, you were running around all over. You went several different places. But let's go back to the...
Okay, first, when I volunteered, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But my flight instructor said, you're pretty good flying on instruments. And there was an instrument section in...
Look at that. It's amazing. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And you're pretty good in flying instruments, so why don't you become a destroyer type pilot? Destroyer was twin engine aircraft, but it was like a fighter bomber type.
Would
In
that,
other words, not a bomber but not a fighter, but a mixture of the two.
Right.
So, okay, I will volunteer for that. So when, not knowing that I had to go to multi-engine school and instrument school, but when I was through those schools, I was automatically, by high command, assigned to Bomber Wing 51, and I suppose Bomber Wing. Now here I end up flying bombing missions. However, there was an order that we were to fly long-range night fighter missions. And well, that with a twin-engine Messerschmitt 110, 210, and 410. And just as we were through that type of flying, we got word we are now flying the jet, the 262. And that was something new for us. And we were excited, but I had to fly the Focke-Wulf 190 only because the order came to assign the best pilots out of Bomber Wing 51 into the 262 project. So that meant that old hands, expert pilots, but used to being one of a crew. And the pilot could always say, get me a fix to so-and-so, get the gear out, or whatever, you know. And that's where some of the old hands failed. And I still see the captain, excellent pilot, came in for a beautiful egg landing, as we called it, so that a raw egg wouldn't break if you touched it down with it. And yet he made a beautiful landing, except he forgot to get the gear out. And that's why they decided to have prior to flying the 262, a flight training program, including dropping bombs on the concrete bombs on Lake Ammersee near Munich. And we then wasted perhaps another Focke-Wulf 190, but not the 262.
Well, so you were practicing with the Focke-Wulf 190, and how long was that for? 2 or 3 months, or?
Just a few months.
Okay. And so then, now you transition to the 262, and that has tricycle gear. Wasn't that difficult to transition from a tail wheel airplane?
It had I had no tail wheel 262. They came out initially with the...
This is a drawing of the 262.
But you didn't fly the tail wheel version, though?
Yeah, I flew the nose.
With the tricycle, what's that case? That black case?
Black case?
Yeah. That's
Right here?
Yeah. So, by the time you started flying the 262, how many hours do you think you had total?
I don't know,
200-300 perhaps?
few $100, yeah.
Okay, here's a picture of the cockpit of the 262. I'm sure it's been a long time and it's kind of hard to remember, but I want to ask something specific.
It is basically the right-hand side of the instrument panel was instruments for engine, where the left side was for navigation.
So, well, before I forget, I have to ask. On top of the rudder pedals, there's straps. Was that was to hold your feet on the rudder pedals? Is that what that was for?
there was one strap so you would not lose your foot or your footing on the pedal because of abrupt movement of the aircraft, that your foot would not fall off the pedal.
You didn't fly in negative G's very often, though.
No.
No, of course not.
I did this once when I was with the Booker 131
And how did that happen? Just for fun, or?
because I was stupid and didn't think of the consequences. However, nothing happened. I was lucky.
What did you?
My flight instructor called me out. However, well, we were stationed at Neu-Ulm, and I thought if I fly a loop, and I was supposed to fly a whole aerobatic program,
Mhm.
loops and rolls and Himmelmann and so forth. So I thought I can do this way, then I can do this way too.
Oh boy.
And fortunately, I throttled back before I entered into the loop, outside loop. But I still got a red eye.
They had some problems with the early 262. Did you feel safe in the flying it? The 262? Did you feel safe? A reliable aircraft?
I think it was, to my feeling, as pleasant as any other aircraft.
Uh-huh, I see.
It had some ways that had to be observed. Okay, I will say you are coming in for a landing and you want to touch down over there, and as you approach your touchdown point, you realize you're too slow or too low. Now, in a Fokker-Wulf 190, you slam the throttle forward and you have power immediately and switch your flight path to your touchdown point.
In other
No
words,
problem.
it didn't have much of a glide
The
ability.
262, you had to open your throttle here.
Yeah. You had to fly it to the runway.
Bop, bop,
You
bop.
could not slam your throttle
Yeah,
forward. Or you had a worse problem, and that is you had excess fuel that didn't burn in the combustion chamber. It also burned in the tailpipe of the aircraft.
Yes.
And when this burned, that increased the temperature of the tailpipe, and at the same time it melted the constrictor that was in the tailpipe.
I see.
And then you had no thrust.
Yeah.
So
one question I want to ask.
Oh, hold on.
Oh,
So what was your first flight? What was it like in the 262? Your very first time you flew it. Take us through it. Where were you? What field? What air base?
There was at Neuburg
Okay.
on the Danube River.
Southern Germany. In southern Germany?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not far from Ingolstadt,
Okay.
Donauwörth, north of Munich.
Okay. I've landed at Fürstenfeldbruck, but I never went to Munich.
Fürstenfeldbruck was the academy.
I know. I remember you said that. So tell us about your first flight in a 262.
Sit down, lock the cabin, make sure that you have enough flying speed when you lift off. And that took 1,500 yards
Wow.
to get enough speed.
So what was the takeoff speed? 120, 130, something like that?
No, 180.
180?
Mhm.
Ryan,
Wow.
listen.
How did you,
I'll
let's
leave him
go
in
back a
little
little.
bit.
How did you start
They're
it?
just interviewing him right now.
Oh, it was started.
How do you start it?
Aerospace Museum. So it's all on record. For the computer,
Okay.
for the 262. For the jet engine.
Christian,
I'll be home at 11:30.
okay.
Okay. All right.
You have to edit it out.
That's okay.
Well, anyway, you had been through courses, in the classroom courses, where to watch for what and how to do what. And the pleasant thing, after flying a Fokker 190, you had to listen to a tremendous roar of the engine in the Fokker 190. And here the 262 was pleasant. And once you had takeoff speed and you could lift off, then you could continue, accelerate. And it was a much larger traffic circuit to fly. And as long as, you follow the instructions that tell you not to slow it down too much, keep your speed up, then nothing happens. A touchdown with a tricycle landing gear was no problem.
Did you land with a nose high? The front wheel off the ground?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious about the starting, because I know that the Yumo engine has its own little engine to start it there. Did you activate that from the cockpit, or did someone activate it outside?
Either way. Now, the mechanic had to pull like a lawnmower starting
Mhm.
rope, pull that, started from the front.
It's on the nose.
But there was only briefly that these units were still in circulation, because they then installed an electric starter motor onto the two-cycle Riedel starter motor.
Mm-hmm. That was a two-cycle. The
Two-cycle.
Riedel was a two-cycle, okay.
Mhm. And that then, as it picked up speed, it arrested itself into the end of the turbine shaft and started turning that. That you could do from the cockpit. And as you then had enough RPMs, you press the button and you had petrol, regular gasoline,
Gasoline?
initially to get up to, I don't remember how many thousand RPMs. But then you switched over to the diesel type aircraft.
So you started it on gasoline, and then when it got going, then you switched to the kerosene or paraffin, and that was a coal derivative, wasn't it? Didn't the Germans had worked out a technology to make the fuel out of coal, correct? Wow.
And that's my point, that I'm saying why the war could have been finished sooner if the American High Command, and I never had a chance to talk to an American commanding officer. Because I think if American Air Forces had continuously dropped bombs on the coal liquefaction plants, there would have been no flying, there would have been no submarine, there would have been no tanks, there would have been no motor of any type. And instead, they dropped the bombs on the cities, and women and children got killed in the process.
Yeah.
And I think that,
Let's talk about that later. Let's talk
Yeah.
some more about the airplane. So the throttle response was very slow,
yeah,
and it would take 6 to 8 seconds from idle all the way up to. So when you landed, did you keep power on pretty much all the way?
you kept power, not full power, of course, but you kept enough power that you could accelerate if necessary.
What was the landing speed? Well, let me ask you. Well, I know that's hard to say. Did you have to adjust it for weight? Did you have to add so many knots for the weight of the fuel on board or anything like that? If you don't remember, you don't remember.
I don't remember.
Okay, you wore an oxygen mask, all right?
Usually not, but when we were flying on an extended flight, part of that then required the need of oxygen.
And so if you, what was the highest you ever went in a 262?
That was when I almost shot a BD-0077 down. And he could have shot me down. Neither one happened. And I went then to higher altitude to save fuel. And the American P-47 came to my base, circling around there waiting for me to show up, which I didn't do him the favor. He could have, of course. My guns didn't work, and so he could have.
What base was that?
Neuburg on the Danube.
Okay. And so anyway, let's see. Let's go. Did you fly a single ship, or did you fly in formation usually?
In all my flights, except for a few where we did some formation flying, I still remember the guy with whom I was flying said, "Don't fly lower than I do." And of course, when you're flying alongside, there are temptations to get underneath and look at the other aircraft from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, normally we flew two aircraft together.
So was it difficult to fly formation when the
No.
throttle response was so slow?
I thought it would be more difficult than the prop plane, the formation flying. The initial formation flying, I recall, from Fürstenfeldbruck was tough to keep the aircraft in the proper position.
Mm-hmm.
But later on in the 262, the speed being much faster than the initial formation flight was easy.
Well, now, you obviously, you must have flown some combat missions with the 262.
No, except this one where my
Well,
guns...
didn't you ever drop bombs with the 262? Never had to drop a bomb on anything? Okay.
Could I ask, did you ever make an attack on the bridge at Remagen?
No, but we talked about it, I remember. And the question came to us, the bridge. The bridge was important, but was it important enough to sacrifice your life for it? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah,
We talked about it, and on the one hand, we were almost thinking about volunteering kamikaze type,
wow,
because then you made sure that the bridge will be destroyed,
sure.
instead of just flying over and hope that the bomb will hit the bridge. But anyway, we were still not ready to sacrifice.
Yes,
Well, when the Allies were about to cross the Rhine, I thought there was a big, that was the biggest day of aviation defending the country. That Germany pretty much threw everything they had in the air, and to save the crossing of the Rhine. I guess you weren't involved in that then. I guess. I don't know. I mean, that was like towards the probably February or March of '45.
yeah, that's right. It was a big breakthrough for the Allies. That bridge was critical.
Yeah, and I don't know why the destruction of the bridge failed or was not done the way it should have been.
What? So you talked about the being involved with the P-47. How did that happen?
I was at Neuburg, and we heard and saw from the distance near Ingolstadt some shatter of machine gun fire or whatever. And there were 4 or 5 P-47s that flew in a circle and were diving onto some ground targets at that airport over there near Neuburg. Can't think of the name of the air base. Anyway, and they were diving onto the target and then pull up and came around and did a second time. And it was just like a traffic pattern. And I decided to see if we couldn't wipe some of the attacking aircraft out. So I came from the sun being in the south and attacked one of the planes that was about ready to dive down into the target when, of course, I approached with my speed much higher than their speed. And as I came in a close position, I tried to fire at my 4 MK-108. I think cannons didn't fire. And I clicked once more, on, off. Didn't fire, but I, at that time, almost ran into that guy. And that guy, he was surprised to see me on his tail, and pass over him, and he looked up to me, and we were as far apart as this room. And I looked down at him, he looked up to me, and by that time, if he had stayed in his position, pulled his nose up, he could have gotten me very easily. But I passed him and then started climbing. Then he couldn't do anything anymore, of course. And I went to higher waiting area, and the air traffic control, or the control unit, gave me information that the Indians were now in Dora 5 to Dora 6. They have,
What does Dora mean?
that means that square on the map was assigned to be D. And there was part of a larger square that was broken into 9 individual identification.
So, I think, when I read that in the book, I thought that was very interesting, that you said that. I mean, and we think of terms of cowboys and Indians, and apparently the German pilots must have thought a lot about the Old West as well, because you call them Indians as if we would call out bandits.
Mhm.
Am I right? Was that a typical term for the adversary?
Yeah, the Indians was or Indiana are very much liked by German youngsters
Mhm.
because there was a famous Karl May, like the month May, and he wrote about the Indians and the life in the Wild West.
So that was a typical term then for the other guys, was Indians. I think that's pretty interesting.
But really, the German youngster looked at Indiana as with a touch of favoritism. Nice guys,
Mhm.
because they had to suffer under the white guys taking away their land and, this type of thing.
Mhm. So how long would a 262, how long could it stay in the air?
How long
Mm-hmm.
could it fly?
Yeah,
1 hour.
that's about it, huh? So the idea of using it as a long-range bomber would never have worked.
Yeah.
So what, now, you knew Adolf Galland, correct? And was he in your unit in number 51?
So we turned the last of our aircraft over to Galland, who was at that time in charge of the unit that assembled first-hand pilots, first
Oh, aces.
experienced pilots.
Did they, now, let me go back a second here. In World War I, the famous pilots, von Richthofen and all the others, they were, for their performance, they were awarded the Blue Max, the Pour le Mérite.
Yeah, it was in the World War II version, it's a Knight's Cross.
Knight's Cross. What did it take to get the Knight's Cross?
You had to accomplish something, and I don't know how many aircraft you had to shoot down.
Well, there were so
Okay.
many that,
The Knight's Cross was issued in various levels. In other words, for shooting 50 aircraft down, you got the Knight's Cross,
Right.
and then 75 aircraft, you got the Knight's Cross with silver oaks and so forth, you know, and they had various,
Is Adolf Galland still alive?
no,
It wasn't that long ago he passed away, was it?
I would think 10 years or so.
There's a wonderful picture in a book we have in our museum.
By
It's,
the way, when the 8th Air Force had the reunion in St. Paul, Minnesota,
right,
Garland was there too. There was an Indian tribe in that area that awarded Garland their Indian Knight's Cross.
well, I saw, there's a book in our library, and it's about an air station in England called RAF Biggin Hill. And Biggin Hill was on a direct route from the French coast to London. And it was where a lot of the combat pilots fought out of. And in fact, over the course of the war, they lost 450 pilots out of that base. But the men would, at night, when it got dark, they would go to the bar and drink themselves silly, like fighter pilots do. And it was the bar was called, the pub was called the White Hart. It's still there apparently. And there was a blacked out wall where people would write their name in chalk. And if you look at this wall, you could see all these famous pilots that had been there over the years. Well, they had a reunion there in the 1960s. And there was a picture in the magazine, or in the book, of these pilots who had been young men in their 20s, flying in the Battle of Britain. And amongst the pilots was Adolf Galland. Because he was there too, but he was just on the opposite team, so, and everybody looked really happy except for one guy. He didn't look very happy about having Adolf Galland there at the bar.
Have you seen that publication that Conver made
No.
on? Would you like to see that?
Sure. Is it handy? I can stop this for a minute. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should. Put this over here.
A logbook that belonged to something like a stepfather to me. He was in World War I, a Canadian pilot, and finished his pilot training just as the war ended. So he didn't get into fighting. But the nice thing was how beautiful the book was kept in handwriting.
These books here, I'm trying to, it's hard to, I can't read the German handwriting, but it seems to say your last flight was March the 3rd, 1945, would that be right?
It could be. I thought it was.
Let me see. I think that's what it is here. I don't know if that's the last line or not. Oops. I think that's March 3rd, 45.
You know what this is? The inventory of equipment or clothing that was issued to you.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh.
So, when a cap, a blouse, an underwear or whatever was given to you, you had to sign for that.
Oh, I see.
And when you move from one unit to another, the new unit had you under control by just looking at,
Oh, that's what it is. So the last unit you were in was in March
Bomber.
3rd,
Bomber Wing 51, and
51?
it was in Neuburg.
So now that, but now, so did Adolf Galland come and take the 262s to go fight the bombers? Is that what they were doing?
He was still trying to shoot down enemy aircraft, yeah.
Now, where was that, it seems to me I recall the name Erding. Was that a base you were stationed at, Erding?
Which one?
Erding?
Neuburg?
Well, I'm trying to remember from the book, but I remember you said that the base was bombed, the runway was destroyed, your barracks were destroyed. You lost your bottle of whiskey, was it, or didn't you have a bottle of, oh, you had a bottle of brandy. Wasn't that it that got blown up? I'm sorry. No, there was a time, wherever you were stationed, you were coming back to the base, and bombers came over and destroyed the runway and your barracks.
Uh-huh.
You don't recall that? No.
Yes, and we took off on the grass next to the runway.
Right. Well, so you did. Oh, so then you just went ahead and flew off the grass for a while then.
Mm-hmm. My problem taking off at one time, I lost the aircraft. I don't know, I wrote about that in the book or not.
Oh, you did. You did write about that.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Let me do something. Because there's a picture. There's a picture in the book. Yeah, tape just ran out.
Thank you.
Bob, you were in flying too? Bob,
Sir?
you were flying too?
Oh, no. I helped build airplanes, and I've been interested in it ever since I was a little fellow. And, in fact, I say that if I had flew, I'd probably be hurt myself, because I'm kind of spastic. You know? I also have interviewed a lot of fellows like you, a lot of them. And I've been to Germany and so forth.
My problem in America was to get, first of all, to get a pilot license.
Well, tell us about the crash when you crashed an airplane. Which airplane was it?
262. I took off, and as I was about for takeoff speed, I lost one engine.
And what happened?
Just lost power on one engine, and I had the choice of discontinuing the takeoff, then of course having the danger of moving as the aircraft was still moving fast enough. It was probably 150 miles an hour. That it then veered over to the side of the runway, over the grass, and then I thought I would make it hold up the nose, and it made it over the building. I was at the edge of the base, and made it also over a bunch of trees. but then it stalled. And in its stalling, it was losing possibility of controlling it. So the aircraft made it half a roll. And then with the right wing touched the ground on a potato plow field. There was nothing there, fortunately. But then it cartwheeled on that ground, and in the process, it just disassembled itself.
I bet.
Now, I was sitting in the middle of the aircraft, so when the right wing touched it, it broke off. The nose broke off, the left wing broke off, the tail broke off. And all that was left is the center part for pilots it's in.
Yeah.
Perhaps because Messerschmitt had plans to use pressurized cabins on aircraft. Perhaps that's why it was structurally so well built that it could take the impact of the disassembling process.
Sure. This was a 109?
No,
No?
262.
No. Okay.
I was looking for that, where's the book? Where's the book? Do you have the book over there? Oh, the other one.
Hmm?
The book he wrote.
Oh, this thing, yeah.
No, the blue one.
Oh, you mean his book?
Yeah,
There's a one out here.
there was a,
You have it. You got it.
so when the, let's talk about when the, let me see, there's a picture here. There's a picture here with you and a friend.
Yeah, that's right. That was at the 8th Air Force reunion. So that's after the war.
Yeah, no, there's a picture with you and standing in the field next to a propeller. Where is it? Or with a friend. And maybe the farmer whose field you crashed in, maybe that was it. I'll find it in a second. Well, so let's just back to the 262. Was it easily controllable? Was it nice to fly? Was it a pleasant airplane to fly?
It was pleasant to fly as long as you religiously watched the criterias and didn't violate the flying too slow, too low.
What was the fastest you ever had it fly?
900 kilometers.
So, you had it, now there was no Mach number on it, right?
No,
And did he,
no, it was just below Mach.
I know someone said they exceeded Mach 1, do you believe it? Someone said they went faster than Mach 1 in a 262, I just wonder if you believe it.
Someone said that after the war, many years after the war.
How would they know?
Pardon me?
How would they know? How would you know you went faster than Mach 1?
Well, you just dropped the nose.
No, but how would you know that you exceeded the Mach?
No, we didn't use the terminology.
So the fastest you ever had it go was 900 kilometers?
Right.
That's 540 knots, that's fast.
Yeah.
So when you engaged the P-47, you must have been flying like that.
Yeah, you didn't have much time now.
And so you went. I noticed that,
Right.
wasn't it Gallon said that flying the 262 was like having angels pushing the airplane because it was
Mm-hmm.
so fast?
Mm-hmm.
So you've been up to, you sat in the cockpit of one up in Pacino, didn't you?
The 109.
Oh, I thought it was a 262 up there.
You're saying?
No, I think, didn't you go to up to the Planes of Fame Museum and sit in a 262?
No, no, I sat in the 262 at Seattle.
Seattle. So how many hours do you think you had in it total? Hours of flying time?
Probably 50.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, that's better than,
See, my logbook, I still have the logbook of the first flight training
mhm.
up until I came to multi-engine instrument school. But then when the heavy raid on Neuburg destroyed my building where I was housing in, that's the time when my personal belongings pulverized.
Yeah. So now when the war ended, where were you when the war ended? May of 1945.
Okay, so when here 100 marauders attacked Neuburg and dropped bombs on the runway, which now we had to repair with a
Huh.
stupid thing under command of some SS officer. The holes in the concrete were filled up again.
Were SS officers worse than different than Luftwaffe officers?
This was someone from the SS.
Well, the SS was,
There, he was assigned to take on that project of getting Neuburg flying again. That's all. So we were doing that much to our disliking. But then near the base, there was a little river. And now we were told to defend the bridge that went across that little river, which meant that we had to dig foxholes and practice with a bazooka to shoot at a tank. Now here we were in a not so good position because the next thing that would have happened is that low-flying enemy aircraft would shoot us in our foxholes, and our life expectancy would be not so long. So then one day someone came to us and said, "Who wants to volunteer?" Volunteer for what? Something for flying. Of course, it's better than in the foxhole here. So the project was, I don't know, what did they call it? Anyway, the project was to take light aircraft, like primary trainers, and load it up with some explosive
Oh.
stuff. And Bienenstock was the name of that project. And with that, we were to take on a pioneer or an expert infantryman and the explosive, and were to fly across the enemy lines, and at the same time letting him out with his explosive so he could blow up some bridge or whatever. And we were to take off again and return back to base. And the operating base was Fürstenfeldbruck. So we now went from Neuburg, Foxhole position to Bienenstock from Fürstenfeldbruck position. And when we arrived there, we were 6 pilots. And when we arrived in Fürstenfeldbruck, they said, sorry, last night the last of the light aircraft that was still around here was used but didn't return. Of course, none of them returned, because to land at night on a meadow somewhere is a matter of luck to survive that. So anyway, that was the end of being in shock. So now we were, us 6 pilots, were looking for some outfit to attach ourselves to. And in Holzkirchen, south of Munich, there was a group, and some of the guys who left Neuburg in the last minute, and they all assembled into the 262 unit that had no aircraft, but were still having all the equipment and engine repair stuff. So we attached ourselves to that group, and they were given an order to stand by at a small village in Austria. The name was Flecken.
Well, so let's just back to the 262. Was it easily controllable? Was it nice to fly? Was it a pleasant airplane to fly?
It was pleasant to fly as long as you religiously watched the criterias and didn't violate the flying too slow, too low.
What was the fastest you ever had it fly?
900 kilometers.
So you had it. Now there was no Mach number on it, right?
No.
No. And
No, it was just below Mach.
I know someone said they exceeded Mach 1. Do you believe it? Someone said they went faster than Mach 1 in a 262. I just wonder if you believe it.
Someone said that after the war, many years after the war.
How would they know?
Pardon me?
How would they know? How would you know you went faster than Mach 1?
Well, you just dropped the nose.
No, but how would you know that you exceeded the Mach?
No, we didn't use the terminology.
So the fastest you ever had it go was 900 kilometers?
Right.
That's 540 knots. That's fast.
Yeah.
So when you engaged the P-47, you must have been flying like that.
Yeah, you didn't have much time now.
And so you went. I noticed that.
Right.
Wasn't it Gallon said that flying the 262 was like having angels pushing the airplane because it was so fast?
Mm-hmm.
So you've been up to. You sat in the cockpit of one up in Pacino, didn't you?
The 109.
Oh, I thought it was a 262 up there.
You're saying?
No, I think didn't you go to up to the Planes of Fame Museum and sit in a 262?
No, I sat in the 262 at Seattle.
Seattle. So how many hours do you think you had in it total? Hours of flying time?
Probably 50.
Oh, really? Well, that's better than.
See, my logbook, I still have the logbook of the first flight training
Mhm.
up until I came to multi-engine instrument school. But then when the heavy raid on Neuburg destroyed my building where I was housing in, that's the time when my personal belongings pulverized.
Yeah. So now, when the war ended, where were you when the war ended? May of 1945.
Okay, so when here 100 marauders attacked Neuburg and dropped bombs on the runway, which now we had to repair with a
Huh.
stupid thing under command of some SS officer. The holes in the concrete were filled up again.
Were SS officers worse than different than Luftwaffe officers?
This was someone from the SS.
Well, the SS was.
He was assigned to take on that project of getting Neuburg flying again. That's all. So we were doing that much to our disliking. But then near the base there was a little river, and now we were told to defend the bridge that went across that little river, which meant that we had to dig foxholes and practice with a bazooka to shoot at a tank. Now here we were in a not so good position, because the next thing that would have happened is that low-flying enemy aircraft would shoot us in our foxholes, and our life expectancy would be not so long. So then one day someone came to us and said, "Who wants to volunteer?" Volunteer for what? Something for flying. Of course, it's better than in the foxhole here. So the project was, I don't know, what did they call it? Anyway, the project was to take light aircraft, like primary trainers, and load it up with some explosive stuff. And Bienenstock was the name of that project. And with that, we were to take on a pioneer or an expert infantryman and the explosive, and were to fly across the enemy lines, and at the same time letting him out with his explosive so he could blow up some bridge or whatever. And we were to take off again and return back to base. And the operating base was Fürstenfeldbruck. So we now went from Neuburg foxhole position to Bienenstock from Fürstenfeldbruck position. And when we arrived there, we were 6 pilots. And when we arrived in Fürstenfeldbruck, they said, "Sorry, last night the last of the light aircraft that was still around here was used but didn't return. Of course, none of them returned, because to land at night on a meadow somewhere is a matter of luck to survive that. So anyway, that was the end of being in shock. So now we were, us 6 pilots, were looking for some outfit to attach ourselves to. And in Holzkirchen, south of Munich, there was a group, and some of the guys who left Neuburg in the last minute, and they all assembled into the 262 unit that had no aircraft, but were still having all the equipment and engine repair stuff. So we attached ourselves to that group, and they were given an order to stand by at a small village in Austria. The name was Flecken. And at Flecken, we stood by, waiting for further notice, further assignments. And we had foodstuff enough, and we had equipment enough, several vehicles, motorcycles, and twiddling thumbs, that's all we could do. Until one day,
At this point, weren't people crying out to end this war and just get out of it?
yeah, at this time, we heard one day the roaring of a tank from the main road to the little village where we were staying. And the driver didn't watch where he was going and slipped with one track into the ditch, and there he was hung up. Couldn't go forward, couldn't go backwards. So we walked a full uniform. No gun, however. We walked over to the guy, and the tank driver, he was slightly perturbed and used the language that I had not learned in 5 years of English classes.
So he was an American?
He was, yeah, an American.
Okay. So now this is just before the war is over.
No, this was just at the end of the war,
May 9th to 10th, something like that.
hours away from the official.
Right.
And as we walked over to this tank driver, he had, God damn it, son of a bitch, and said,
He'd be an American.
lengthy discussion about, and we said, do you need some help? Oh, God damn right, I need some help. So we got one of our big trucks and put a chain on there and pulled them out, and that was the first time I met an American military.
Really? So you've been...
And it was then about 4 days later when an American captain came over and said, do you want to take over military police duty for us?
Right.
Well, our captain said, what do you think? What do you think? Yeah, why not? So we got an armband, MP, white armband with MP, Luftwaffe.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a Mercedes and motorcycles. We roamed around in Austria looking for law and order. And we were supposed to pick up any soldier walking home from Italy to their home in Germany somewhere and we were supposed to put them in a POW camp. But how many do you think we found?
Well, there were thousands. There was 60 or 70,000. So in other words, you just couldn't help it.
Whoever came from Italy on foot all the way to Germany, to Austria at least at that time, we let them go to their
Sure, of
home, of
course.
course.
Well, let me ask you. We're kind of running out of time here. I don't like to take more than a couple hours. But when the war was all done, and you've lived 60 years past that, was this a horrible mistake to get into this war in the first place, or? I mean, I know Hitler had a powerful effect on people, but it was a disaster for everybody. I mean, what is your reflection all these years later on the whole mess? Was the war worth anything at all, or?
The moment that we became military policemen, that meant, of course, there's no more fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And things began to be more orderly, and as much as Erding was a base we used to be stationed,
Mm-hmm.
which was taken over by the American Army Air Corps
Mm-hmm.
as European Air Depot 205, I think, APO. Anyway, and they were looking for workers. And I met Bob Schillinger from Liberty, New York,
Who became a good friend of yours?
who became,
He was a very good friend of yours, correct?
he became, my friend, and we consumed a few bottles of whiskey, and he offered if I would like to fly his P-51.
I know, yeah.
And I said, hell yes, of course. Okay, I'll make arrangements. He said, no, you won't, because it isn't worth your career.
Oh.
The moment someone sees me climbing into your aircraft, he will automatically ask who allowed you to, and that meant that's the end of your career.
Well, some of the American POWs, one of them, I can't remember his name, who was shot down and held in, was it Luft 4, I think it was, and he was he was an ace, I don't remember his name, but he was allowed to fly an ME-109. The camp commander arranged it to put a little bit of fuel in it and let him fly it around the traffic pattern, just so he could see what it was like. No guns, just a little bit of gas, and they had some other ME-109s making sure he didn't escape with the airplane. So it wouldn't have been too bad. Wouldn't you have loved to do that, though? That would have been fantastic. Did you ever fly after the war again, when you came to the States?
In Germany?
Well, you didn't fly in Germany at all. It wasn't until you came to the States.
No, I came to America in '51.
And you wanted to be an airline pilot, right?
That's why I came to America. I didn't come here to enjoy the air of California.
Really? Well, I mean, I read the book, and it was interesting how you and your wife drove all the way, or you came on a bus all the way across the country.
Yeah, Bob Schillinger, by the way, he tried to get me on board a freighter as a stowaway.
Really?
And just as he wanted to make the last arrangements, he came to Munich. I went to Bremerhaven, and we crossed our paths.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that didn't work out. And it took until '51 that then I was with my wife to come to America, but I had family here in California, and there were 30 relatives.
But, so when the war ended in 1945, and you left 6 years later, what were the, and there was, and the country, Germany was divided up into the sections, French, Russian, English, and American. Which section were you in?
I went first back, my parents lived in Hamburg. My stepmother and my father had an apartment in Hamburg, and I was planning to be in Hamburg, and I even got a job offer to drive a truck for someone.
Now, which section was that? Was that the Russian section?
No, this is British.
British, okay.
And however, when I went to the Department of Labor and to get the assignment to work as a truck driver, the officer said, "You want to be a truck driver? You didn't drive a truck before the war, did you?" "No, I didn't. I wasn't even driving anything." "Well, then you can't get that job. We'll have to find someone who was a truck driver." So they wouldn't give me the job. But then they gave me in writing, they sent me a message that I am to report on such and such a date to clear up the rubble in the city of Hamburg.
Mm.
And on the notice it said, "This is a notice given by the military government of the British occupation zone, and not obeying this note, you have severe punishment except the death penalty." Except the death penalty.
So what did the people think of that?
Well, didn't have much choice as to. I did not want to get into this situation to risk becoming a prisoner. So I went back to Erding, where I had some friends, and that's when I met Bob Schillinger, who worked as a American officer on the base of Erding Air Base.
But
And
wasn't
he
there,
got me the job as an interpreter.
no,
And
wasn't,
as a mechanic that worked in the motorpool.
wasn't there a tremendous shortage of food at the end of was there a real shortage of food at the end of the war?
That did what?
A shortage of food, I mean, bread and, food for the German people. I thought there were a lot of shortages where you couldn't get food. People were starving. Is that not correct?
I don't follow the question.
Well, I got the impression from your book that the German people weren't treated all that well.
No, but especially the Russian zone.
Well, you were captured by the Russians, weren't you, at one point?
No, see, I was in Austria.
No, I thought there was a point where you got
This
Oh, there was a friend of yours that did it.
this came to the end. We stayed in Flecken.
Mhm.
And then one day it was decided to move all German troops out of Austria around the area of near Munich anyway, where there were prison camps established, and all military personnel were to be processed through those prison camp arrangements.
So is this the or some point in the book you mentioned seeing prisoners in striped clothes, Jewish prisoners? Was that, am I correct about that?
I was never a prisoner.
No, but didn't you say, maybe it was something else I was reading. Someone was talking about being involved in some construction and seeing some prisoners who had been released somehow or another. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. So, well, you must have went to college here in the United States.
Other than some classes that I took in English, and
Well, you got on with Convair. So what was your job with Convair?
initially I was an interpreter because Convair had hired from Berlin an expert glass blower, and Convair was involved in the Carictron project, which meant that glass work had to be done. An electron gun had to be sealed in a picture tube,
Oh, television.
like a television, yeah.
Right.
But this was a system that was newly invented to control, radar control, the skies around the United States.
Right. So was this Celestron? Was that what it's called?
And so here I became, because of Odap, what's his name, when he was given this job, the glass work, he could do that very well, except that he couldn't communicate with the authorities there because he didn't speak a word of English. And so they, through word of mouth, they heard of me being around, and so they hired me as an interpreter, who then at the same time learned to blow glass.
Oh. Now, the Convair built the F-102, which was a copy, to some extent, of a German Delta Wing airplane. I can't remember what it was called. The Germans were experimenting with the Delta Wing airplane design. Did you know anything about that at all?
I don't. Yes, I know but I don't know the name.
Oh, okay. I just wondered if they've had, because I thought they brought back German scientists. They brought back 1,000, at least, German scientists and mathematicians. So
Yeah, of course, here at Convair, Dr. Hans Friedrich, Ernst Lange, Schwedetsky,
So you knew these people?
all these guys here in San Diego
Yeah.
were becoming members of Convair or General Dynamics.
Right.
And
So-
they came from Peenemünde, the rocket experimental base.
So did you help in the interpreting for them then, or?
Yes, I had at one time, not within Convair Electronics where I was, but they had some communication with some scientists that they were hiring for certain projects. And I was asked to interpret that too.
So when did you retired in what, 1967? Something like that?
I retired in 1991.
1991, oh. From
Oh.
Convair?
I was from Convair.
From Convair?
You retired from Convair in
Wow.
'67.
No, 91.
91.
Well, listen, we've got
The reason the last 4 years of my work with General Dynamics,
Yeah.
they assigned me to Munich Germany,
Sure,
and I was part of the RAM program, Rolling Airframe Missile,
sure.
and I was European representative, was my title.
I see. Yeah,
And in 91, they changed the whole concept of who builds what and so forth. It was a joint project between German industry and General Dynamics. And General Dynamics, Cucamonga, was the American unit, and in Germany there was Messerschmitt, Berko, Blom, and
When you were in, did you ever meet Hanna Reich? The female test pilot? She was supposedly Hitler's personal favorite pilot. She was the German woman who flew lots of different airplanes. You don't remember her, Hanna Reich?
Rush.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there's a book about her. She flew the Comet, the rocket plane. She only did gliding in it. She wasn't and then after the war,
Anna Reich.
Yeah, that's it. That's her. Yeah. And she set gliding records all over the world. She was a very famous person. So you met Adolf Galland. And you saw Hitler a few times, didn't you?
Well, Garland only because the American Confederate Army Air Corps,
Really?
the local unit, Confederate Air Force,
Oh wow.
and they, at that time, a number of times, brought some German people to their meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and had meetings then in San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever gone to the, what is it called, the Old Bold Pilots up in Oceanside?
Near,
It's in Ocean. They do it every Wednesday in
Yeah.
Oceanside.
I had been a couple of times to there.
And there's another 262 pilot whose name I can't say, but his nickname is Chippy, Chipunka or something like that. Do you know his name? I think he's from. He flew the 262 Night Fighter.
A German fella?
German, yeah, German fellow, about that tall, he's real short, and he's 91 years old. He's got almost a Czechoslovakian last name, but his nickname is
He
Chippy.
lives in Los Angeles.
That's him, Pasadena. I'm sure you've met him.
I met him when a chap in Canada made some paintings, and Virginia Bader,
Exactly, right.
she has a store to sell
It's in
memorabilities.
Laguna Beach, I think. Is it Laguna Beach? I think so. Well, maybe we should call it here. We're all getting tired.
yeah.
Anything else you want to grab the phone?
I will just say, call me back
I
later.
think they just hung up. He's getting tired.
I'm gonna buy one of his books if I can.
Oh, sure.
There's a stack of them out there.
Yeah. He doesn't want to talk about it.
Sir?
Nothing.
I think, yeah.
I should have offered you at least a beer.
Oh, no, thank you. Never thought about it. It's more fascinating to talk to you. So anything you'd like to tell us that you can think of, that you remember from the days?
Well, my difficulty getting to America was, of course, not like what you find every day, visitors from the south walking across the border, and here I am, and that's it. I did it the legal way, and it took 3 years.
Why did you decide to come here?
I thought in Germany flying will be not possible for a while. And I thought in America, general aviation will be on top of the world. And my uncle encouraged me, and so I put in for application to get a visa to come to America.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, I tried it the illegal way with Bob Schilling as assistance as a stowaway. But then I did it the legal way, and it took some time. But then I made it. There were 30 relatives, all people who had come to America in 1928 and 30, somewhere around there.
You weren't sponsored. Sometimes you
No.
had to be sponsored to come there.
I had to find someone who would write an affidavit of support,
Yeah.
so in case I needed some help, someone would be there to do
Sure.
it wasn't just like, here I am. Then I went to the FAA and said I'd like to have a pilot license. I remember going to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and I said I would like to have a driver's license and fill out this questionnaire,
Mm.
and $3, and here's your license.
I see.
And then
Wow.
to get a pilot license, sorry, we cannot give you a pilot license because you're not a citizen. So it takes 5 years to become a citizen. So I put in my application for citizenship. When then I got my license after 5 years, I went to the airlines and said, here, I'd like to get a job.
Yeah. When did you get your citizenship then? Must have been in the 50s somewhere?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the airlines, and I went to several, they said, wonderful, you're a citizen and you have a pilot license. Okay. How old are you? 32. Sorry, you're too old.
That happened to me too. When I got out of the service, I was 29 and I was too old.
That's when I had bleeding stomach ulcers.
Here's your friend. Here's your friend Bob Schilling there.
That's Bob Schilling.
Did you take the picture?
Hmm?
Did you take that picture?
I think so.
Don't remember.
I did.
Here's who we're talking about. I just another question. This is silly, but in the book you mentioned so much about you had a watch, an aviator's watch, but everybody seemed to want to take your watch away. What was so special about those watches?
I don't know. Most German boys at that time, when they were 14, got a watch. And so it wasn't unusual that soldiers had watches.
Well, but did the aviators?
But Americans apparently didn't have. That it wasn't that common to have everyone watch.
But did the aviators, the pilots, did they have different kind of watches?
There were special watches.
And you had one of those. I know you said you hid it. You kept it for a long time until someone finally found it.
We were standing in when I finally wanted to get discharged, officially discharged, where it says in here, I'm healthy,
Right.
so I can get discharged. And when I got in the discharge camp, one day an American private first class made an inspection of all the things that soldiers brought into the discharge camp. And there was, next to me was a dentist. He had a bunch of tools that he laid out in front of him. And this young private took with his stick, looked around it, out, at which time next to me was a captain, a former airline pilot who spoke English. And he then said, "Now, don't you see, this guy is a dentist. He needs those tools to help somebody," and so forth. And he did. That's just a little explanation. Okay. Then it was all right for him to keep his tools.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it was just a matter of 1 week or so, and we were discharged.
Did they treat officers different than enlisted men? In the discharge camp, were you treated differently than the enlisted men?
No.
Same?
No.
Well, I think we should conclude. It's been 2 hours.
Do you get a release form from them?
Oh, I do. I do need to do that. Do you have one there?
There's one there.
Okay.
I wonder if I could take a photograph of you.
Why don't you save the film?
Well, this digital camera can take hundreds of them.
See, it probably doesn't work.
You take another one. Okay, I want to pull back a little bit.
Don't ruin the camera.
Uh, oh. All right. Yeah, could you look?
Why don't you?
Could you look to the right a little bit, to that, look towards him? Yeah, good, thank you. Now look towards him, yeah.
That's even worse to look at.
Good. Thank you.
It's just been fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an interview form. It's just a release, because we're gonna put it on the internet. It just says that you agree to let us publicize. It's not being sold, we're not gonna sell anything, it's just for free to take a look, people take a look at. And I'm gonna try and cut it down, so we're just talking about a few, important things. And I'm gonna send you a disc, I'll send you the disc for and get to the kids.
What do you want me to do?
Oh, just sign right here. Just sign right there. Just say you agree to allow us to put it on the internet.
That's all it is.
There you go. Sorry, I made a mess there. Was that your son that was here?